They made us laugh, they made us cry, they played heroes, lovers, and legends. But off camera, these Hollywood icons were nothing like the roles that made them famous. From secret temper tantrums to cruel comments and shocking behavior behind the scenes, the truth is way messier than the movies. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on 20 stars who weren't just difficult, they were downright jerks. You won't believe what your favorite actor said or did. Get ready for ego, scandal, and reputations shattered. This isn't gossip, this is Hollywood, unfiltered. Bing Crosby. Bing Crosby was once seen as, but behind closed doors, things looked very different. His son, Gary Crosby, shattered that illusion in his 1983 memoir, Going My Own Way, revealing that Bing was anything but kind at home. Gary wrote, "We had to pretend we were this happy family, but I lived in fear of him every day." He described punishments that weren't just strict, they were cruel. Bing allegedly used a metal-studded belt to discipline his sons, often for minor mistakes, like slouching or speaking out of turn. According to Gary, the discipline wasn't about love, it was about control. He said, "He whipped the hell out of us." And it didn't stop at home. Bing reportedly treated people he worked with the same way, dismissing crew members early to avoid paying them and refusing to interact with fans. Bob Hope, his longtime co-star, once said bluntly, "I never liked him. He wasn't the guy everyone thought he was." Many who worked closely with him described Crosby as cold and arrogant, not the friendly face they saw on Christmas records. Despite the backlash after Gary's book, Bing never publicly apologized or addressed the claims. The irony is painful. He sang about peace and joy, yet brought so little of it into his own home. 2 of his sons died by suicide, their pain echoing long after Bing's death. For many, his carefully crafted public image was permanently cracked. Coming up next is another legend whose private life shocked the world, even though she seemed like everyone's favorite on-screen mom. But behind the lipstick and pearls, Joan Crawford ruled her home like a tyrant, and one book made sure the world never forgot. Joan Crawford. Joan Crawford was the ultimate Hollywood beauty, stylish, poised, and powerful. Her presence lit up the screen in every role from Mildred Pierce to Grand Hotel. But her adopted daughter, Christina Crawford, told a very different story in her 1978 memoir, Mommy Dearest, which revealed years of abuse and strict control inside the Crawford household. Christina claimed her mother was violent, obsessive about cleanliness, and often flew into unpredictable rages. One of the most famous scenes from the book, and later the film adaptation, involves Joan screaming, "No wire hangers," before beating Christina with one. The line became iconic, but the reality behind it was deeply traumatic. Crawford's home, according to Christina, was a place of fear, not love. Joan's behavior didn't just affect her kids. On set, she was famously manipulative. During the filming of Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, she sabotaged co-star Bette Davis by placing weights in her pockets during a dragging scene, making the shot physically harder for Davis to perform. Director Robert Aldrich later said, "They hated each other, but Crawford took it to another level." Despite the controversies, Crawford always presented herself as a perfectionist. "I'm not just a movie star, I'm a working woman," she once said, but her fierce control over her image may have masked a much darker reality. While some of her other children denied the abuse claims, the damage to Crawford's legacy was done. The phrase "Mommy Dearest" became shorthand for toxic parenting, and Joan became a cautionary tale of how fame can hide deep dysfunction. Now, if you thought Joan's story was unsettling, wait until you hear what was happening behind the laughter of one of TV's most beloved comedy queens. Lucille Ball made millions laugh, but those who worked with her weren't always smiling. Lucille Ball. Lucille Ball is still one of the most recognizable faces in television history. Her role as Lucy Ricardo in I Love Lucy made her a comedy legend. But behind the scenes, the real Lucy was much less playful. Multiple people who worked closely with her described Ball as cold, controlling, and at times downright mean. One story that stands out comes from a flight attendant who tried to speak to Lucille directly. Ball refused to reply and had her assistant say, "Miss Ball doesn't speak to the help." That one sentence captured a completely different version of the woman people adored on screen. Her behavior towards staff and colleagues often clashed with the warm-hearted image she projected. Her son, Desi Arnaz Jr., experienced that harshness firsthand. When he began dating young actress Patty Duke, Ball reportedly did everything she could to break them up. According to Duke, Lucy's interference caused real pain. "She made me feel like trash," Duke later said. For Ball, maintaining the perfect image of her family seemed more important than their actual happiness. Even Hollywood elites weren't safe from Lucy's attitude. Richard Burton, in his private diaries, described her as a monster of staggering charmlessness. While some defended her behavior as strict professionalism, others said it was plain cruelty. Ball wanted to control every detail, every impression, and every person who could impact her reputation. Lucille Ball may be remembered as a comedy pioneer, and she absolutely was. But the woman behind the laughs had a side few were willing to talk about during her lifetime. Now, years later, the full picture is clearer. Not every laugh came from joy. Up next is another Hollywood face who looked like a carefree swashbuckler on screen. But Errol Flynn's real life? Wild, reckless, and way darker than any of his movies. Let's talk about the scandals he couldn't charm his way out of. Errol Flynn. Errol Flynn was the original Hollywood bad boy. With his sword in one hand and a drink in the other, Flynn became a massive star in films like The Adventures of Robin Hood. But behind that charming grin was a man constantly surrounded by controversy, chaos, and serious accusations that went way beyond late-night partying. In 1942, Flynn was charged with the statutory rape of 2 underage girls. He was eventually acquitted, but the trial rocked Hollywood. One of the girls claimed Flynn plied her with champagne on his yacht before the assault. The phrase "in like Flynn" was born during this time, a dark inside joke that hinted at his unchecked behavior. Though he walked free, the stain never fully disappeared. Off-screen, Flynn was no easier to work with. He drank heavily, showed up late, and frequently insulted co-stars. Betty Davis, who worked with him in the private lives of Elizabeth and Essex, said bluntly, "He himself openly said he didn't know anything about acting, and I admired his honesty because he was absolutely right." As he got older, the effects of his lifestyle took over. By the time he died of a heart attack at age 50, doctors said his body resembled that of an 85-year-old man. Flynn once said, "I like my whiskey old and my women young." That quote alone tells you a lot about who he really was. He saw himself as untouchable, and for a while, he was. But eventually, even Hollywood's golden boy couldn't outrun the consequences. The same charm that made him a star also became part of his undoing. Errol Flynn's reputation was built on daring and drama, but Edward G. Robinson had a different kind of power. Known for his gangster roles, he brought that same bossy energy to the real world, making life miserable for the people around him. Edward G. Robinson. Edward G. Robinson ruled the screen with his iconic scowl and sharp delivery. In Little Caesar and Key Largo, he made crime look cool, but those who worked with him knew he didn't just play tough guys, he was one. His perfectionism turned into control, and many on set found him downright impossible. Robinson didn't tolerate mistakes. He reportedly yelled at extras for stepping out of frame, snapped at assistant directors, and stormed off set when things didn't go his way. One crew member recalled, "He acted like the camera was there just for him, and the rest of us were lucky to be breathing his air." He had no patience for anyone he thought was beneath him, including younger co-stars trying to learn the ropes. His ego stretched far beyond the studio. According to multiple accounts, Robinson demanded separate dressing rooms, special lighting, and full script control, no matter what film he was in. Even more frustrating was his habit of rewriting scenes himself and insisting the director follow his version. While his fans saw him as a powerhouse actor, his colleagues often saw a man who thought he was the movie. Edward G. Robinson once said, "I don't mind playing the villain on screen, I just refuse to be one off screen." Unfortunately, those who worked with him would beg to differ. His legacy as a film icon stands, but the people behind the camera have a very different story to tell, one of a star who let his talent turn into tyranny. From one Hollywood heavyweight to another, John Wayne didn't just carry a six-shooter on screen. Off-screen, he aimed some of the most shocking words ever spoken by a Hollywood icon. His real-life views were as loud and dangerous as any Western gunfight. John Wayne. John Wayne was the definition of old-school masculinity. In films, he played the rugged hero, the man's man, the patriot. But in real life, Wayne's views were anything but noble. A 1971 Playboy interview blew the lid off the clean-cut image he'd crafted and revealed a man stuck in another time, with beliefs that shocked even his biggest fans. In that interview, Wayne said, "I believe in white supremacy until the blacks are educated to a point of responsibility." The quote was direct, unapologetic, and set off a firestorm. He also criticized Native Americans and gay people, calling films like Midnight Cowboy perverted. While some tried to chalk it up to generational ignorance, many felt his views were clear and dangerous. That interview alone still haunts his legacy today. Wayne's temper was another issue. At the 1973 Oscars, he reportedly had to be physically restrained when Native American activist Sachin Littlefeather took the stage to decline Marlon Brando's award. People close to the scene said he was furious and wanted to confront her right there. It wasn't just a bad look, it was an explosive reaction that revealed how unwilling he was to accept change in Hollywood. Even decades later, his name remains controversial. Students have protested his name on buildings, and there have been public efforts to rename John Wayne Airport. Still, many defend him, saying he was a product of his time. But the truth is, not every actor from his era held those beliefs, and many have expressed regret. Wayne never did. As he once said, "I don't feel we did wrong taking this great country away from Native Americans. That wasn't a character talking. That was the real John Wayne." Next up, get ready for a Hollywood legend who danced like a dream but demanded like a drill sergeant. Gene Kelly's smile charmed the world, but behind closed doors, it left bruises, literally. Gene Kelly. Gene Kelly floated across the screen like he had wings on his feet. In Singin' in the Rain, he seemed joyful, easygoing, and full of life. But behind the scenes, Gene wasn't all smiles. His pursuit of perfection often turned into cruelty, especially for those who couldn't keep up with him on set. Debbie Reynolds was just 19 when she filmed Singin' in the Rain with Kelly. She later wrote, "The two hardest things I ever did in my life were childbirth and making that movie." Kelly, who was also co-directing, pushed her to the limit: harsh criticism, grueling rehearsals, and zero patience. One day, she was found crying under a piano, her feet bleeding from endless takes. Kelly didn't comfort her. He simply expected more. Reynolds wasn't the only one. Others described Kelly as intense, arrogant, and emotionally distant. He demanded absolute control over every movement, every frame. And if you failed to meet his standard, you were shamed. His perfectionism may have created cinematic magic, but it crushed spirits along the way. Behind closed doors, he was known to dismiss ideas that weren't his and belittle coworkers who tried to offer input. Later in life, rumors swirled about Kelly's alleged support for the Irish Republican Army. A few publications suggested he had met with IRA figures and even funded weapons. His widow denied it, calling the accusations ridiculous. Still, whispers of political extremism added more complexity to a man already battling a reputation for being cold. Kelly once said, "I never wanted to be a dancer. I just had to do it right." That attitude may have made him a legend, but it didn't make him kind. Now, from demanding dancers to divisive cowboys, Tommy Lee Jones was never known for dancing, but he sure knew how to stomp on people's nerves. He didn't need scandals to gain a reputation, just his personality, and some unforgettable words aimed straight at Jim Carrey. Tommy Lee Jones. Tommy Lee Jones has spent decades playing gruff, no-nonsense men, and by all accounts, that wasn't much of a stretch. While some actors leave their roles at the door, Jones seemed to bring his cold, intense energy everywhere he went. Many who've worked with him say he's one of the most unpleasant people in the business. His most famous off-screen moment happened during the filming of Batman Forever. Jim Carrey, who played the Riddler, once shared a shocking story. "I walked into a restaurant and the maitre d' said, 'You're working with Tommy Lee Jones, aren't you?' I said yes, and he said, 'He's in the corner.' So I went over to say hi, and he got up shaking. He must have been in mid-rage, and he said, 'I hate you. I really don't like you. I cannot sanction your buffoonery.'" That wasn't just a bad mood. Jones had a long-standing reputation for being cold to fans, rude to journalists, and impatient with his co-workers. He frequently walked out of interviews, refused autographs, and rarely smiled in public. His unwillingness to engage wasn't mysterious. It was hostile. Directors had to work around his moods, and actors often tiptoed on set to avoid setting him off. Even though he's never been involved in a major scandal, Jones's personality has kept him at a distance from much of Hollywood. As one critic put it, he's the only guy who could make a press tour feel like a funeral. Despite his talent, Jones remains a symbol of brilliance wrapped in a bitter shell, unmoved by fame, and often unmoved by people in general. But if you thought Jones was tough, wait till you hear about the woman who went from America's sweetheart to Tinker Hell. Julia Roberts may have lit up the big screen, but her behavior behind the camera lit up a lot of tempers. Julia Roberts. Julia Roberts' smile was once considered one of the most iconic in Hollywood. With hits like Pretty Woman and Erin Brockovich, she became the queen of the box office. But for those who worked behind the scenes, that smile didn't always mean kindness. Julia had a reputation for being difficult, and not just during her early years. During the filming of Hook in 1991, the crew gave her a nasty nickname, Tinker Hell. She played Tinkerbell, but reportedly clashed with nearly everyone on set. Director Steven Spielberg later said, "It was an unfortunate time for us to work together," which was his polite way of saying it was a nightmare. Reports described her as moody, often late, and uncooperative. She was going through a very public breakup with Kiefer Sutherland at the time, which only added fuel to the fire. Her temper didn't stop there. Roberts also feuded with co-stars like Nick Nolte and clashed with makeup artists and assistants. She was known to snap at crew members and disappear mid-filming, causing long delays. Even her own brother, actor Eric Roberts, admitted there were years when they didn't speak due to her ego. "She's a great actress," he said, "but she can be tough." Julia herself has occasionally acknowledged her bad behavior. "Sometimes I come off as really hard," she said in an interview, "but it's not my intention." Whether or not the intention was there, the damage was. While fans still love her characters, those who worked behind the scenes tell a story that doesn't always match the red carpet sparkle. The line between difficult and jerk can be thin, and Julia has danced on both sides of it. Coming up next, Edward Norton might play complex, deep characters on screen, but off-camera, he's known for something else entirely. Being so difficult that even Marvel didn't want to work with him again. Let's dive into what really happened. Edward Norton. Edward Norton is one of those actors who transforms completely into his characters. Fight Club, American History X, Primal Fear. Each role shows his intense dedication to craft, but in real life, Norton's perfectionism has turned into a problem. Hollywood insiders say he's so controlling and combative that studios avoid him, no matter how talented he is. It all came to a head with The Incredible Hulk in 2008. Norton not only starred in the movie, he reportedly rewrote large parts of the script himself. When it came time to join the Avengers, Marvel dropped him. Studio head Kevin Feige made a rare public statement. "We want an actor who embodies the creativity and collaborative spirit of our other talented cast members." Everyone knew it was a shot at Norton. Behind the scenes, Norton was known for taking over projects. He'd clash with directors, argue over editing, and even demand final cut. One producer said he wanted to be the actor, writer, director, and editor, and wouldn't take no for an answer. His controlling nature left a long trail of burned bridges, even though his performances were often brilliant. Norton later admitted in an interview, "Fame is very corrosive. It changes how people work with you." That may be true, but in his case, the change seems to have come from within. While he continues to act, the buzz around him has cooled. Directors now think twice before casting him, and fans wonder if the genius is worth the headache. From one control freak to another. Patrick Dempsey looked like the dream doctor on Grey's Anatomy. But on set, some cast members say working with him felt more like a nightmare. Let's talk about the dark side of McDreamy. Patrick Dempsey. Patrick Dempsey stole hearts as Dr. Derek Shepherd on Grey's Anatomy. He was charming, sensitive, and kind, everything you'd want in a fictional doctor. But behind the scenes, Dempsey was allegedly causing so much stress that some cast members were left with lasting trauma. Former executive producer James D. Perriott revealed that Dempsey's behavior became such a problem that it created a toxic environment. He said, "Some cast members had PTSD with him. He had this hold on the set. People were scared of him." Complaints included shouting at crew members, storming off set, and throwing fits about long work hours, even though he often worked less than others. Things got so bad that show creator Shonda Rhimes reportedly gave an ultimatum. Either Dempsey goes or she does. In the end, the character of Derek Shepherd was killed off in season 11, shocking fans and marking the end of an era. Rhimes later said, "There were HR issues. He was terrorizing the set. It wasn't just gossip, it was a matter of workplace safety." Dempsey has since admitted the role was exhausting, saying, "It's a grind. You have to be grateful, but it takes a toll." Still, being tired doesn't excuse being cruel. The difference between McDreamy and real-life Patrick Dempsey is proof that charm on screen doesn't always mean kindness in reality. Now let's turn to someone who's made fans smile for decades. But behind that smile, William Shatner's co-stars say he was a scene-stealing diva with zero respect for others. You'll never watch Star Trek the same way again. William Shatner. William Shatner became a TV icon as Captain James T. Kirk in Star Trek. His dramatic pauses and confident swagger made him unforgettable. But off-camera, Shatner was known for something else entirely, being self-absorbed, difficult, and nearly impossible to work with. The most infamous fallout came with co-star George Takei, who played Sulu. Takei said bluntly, "He's a douche, self-centered. He has no idea what real friendship means." Takei accused Shatner of hogging screen time, cutting other actors' lines, and isolating himself from the cast. Other Star Trek actors backed up these claims, saying Shatner treated the rest of the ensemble like background extras. One of the most controversial moments came after Leonard Nimoy's death. Shatner missed the funeral, claiming he had a charity event, but fans and former colleagues were furious. Many felt it showed a lack of basic respect. Shatner defended himself by saying, "What I do is who I am. I don't apologize for that." It didn't help his image. Even at his Comedy Central roast, Shatner couldn't escape the truth. Roastmaster Jeff Ross joked, "Shatner's ego is so big, it has its own star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame." And while Shatner may laugh it off, those who've worked with him say the arrogance is no act. His legacy is undeniable, but his reputation is equally unforgettable, just for very different reasons. Next up, Kiefer Sutherland may have played America's toughest anti-terror agent, but off-screen, his biggest enemy was himself. Alcohol, arrests, and on-set chaos turned him from star to liability. Let's break down what went wrong. Kiefer Sutherland earned fame as Jack Bauer, the no-nonsense agent in 24 who saved the world again and again. But off-screen, Sutherland couldn't even save his own reputation. His drinking, temper, and erratic behavior made him a nightmare for co-stars and a legend for all the wrong reasons. Freddie Prinze Jr., who briefly worked with Sutherland on 24, didn't hold back. He said, "Kiefer was the most unprofessional dude in the world. I hated every minute of working with him." Prinze claimed Sutherland would show up late, slur his lines, and reek of alcohol. The experience was so bad, he nearly quit acting altogether. And it wasn't an isolated opinion. Other crew members echoed those complaints. Sutherland's rap sheet backs it up. He's been arrested multiple times for DUIs and once tackled a fashion designer during a drunken outburst in New York. On 24, his personal behavior became such a liability that Fox reportedly had a handler on set just to manage his moods and alcohol use. One insider shared, "You didn't know if you were getting Jack Bauer or just Jack, completely out of control." From one intense man to another, Tom Cruise is known for doing his own stunts, but behind the action hero image lies a life full of control, controversy, and secrecy. His obsession with Scientology drove more than just his wife away. It changed how the world sees him. Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise is one of the biggest names in Hollywood. He runs faster than anyone, does death-defying stunts, and flashes that million-dollar smile like no one else. But behind all that energy and charm, Cruise has developed a reputation for being domineering, secretive, and emotionally distant, especially when it comes to Scientology. His marriage to Katie Holmes revealed a lot. Reports claimed Cruise micromanaged her life, from what she wore to who she could see. Holmes eventually left him and the Church of Scientology in 2012, taking their daughter Suri with her. Since then, Cruise has had almost no public relationship with his daughter, and insiders blame his loyalty to the church. One former Scientologist said, "You're either all in or you're out," and Tom's all in. Finally, we wrap up this countdown with someone whose reputation may be the most infamous of them all. Chevy Chase made the world laugh, but made his co-workers cry. From Saturday Night Live to Community, his name became a warning, not a compliment. Chevy Chase. Chevy Chase made a career out of being funny, but off-screen, nobody was laughing. From Saturday Night Live to Community, Chase left a trail of broken relationships, public fights, and burned bridges. His co-stars didn't just dislike him, they feared working with him. It started early. When he returned to SNL to host in 1978, he nearly got into a fistfight with Bill Murray backstage. Cast members said Chase had become arrogant and mean, constantly throwing insults and demeaning people. Gilda Radner, one of the show's beloved stars, reportedly broke down in tears after he mocked her appearance. He was banned from hosting the show for decades after that. Fame doesn't make you flawless. These stars had the spotlight, the fans, and the power, but still left a trail of hurt, chaos, and regret. Some never changed. Others tried and failed. What these stories prove is that talent doesn't always come with character. So next time you rewatch a classic or see a name in lights, remember, behind every charming smile might be a temper, a grudge, or a broken relationship. Which of these surprised you the most? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more raw, real Hollywood stories.